from panels like this, to this, to stuff going on with this, your throne has legitimately been just jaw-dropping. So, I sat down and dedicated some time to kind of catching up with your throne, and to be completely blunt with you, I'm not caught up yet. Like, if I was to take a look at, like, the chapter I'm currently on, I'm, like, on chapter, 173, somewhere around in there, so, as you can see, I still have quite a few chapters to catch up with, but I was, like, rereading, or reading, like, part 2 of Your Throne, and catching back up to where I was, and I got to chapter 154, 155 or 156 here, and then like 158, and I was just like, this is some wild stuff going on in this series that I just need to take some time to really talk about, because this doesn't even get into the stuff like in, chapter 161 with what happens with Helios, to just like this stuff with, Medea becoming, like, actually the daughter of the Emperor. There's a lot that's honestly just that happened in these chapters that I just need to dive headfirst into. So, first off, let's just talk about Eros and Medea actually just doing the deed. That they literally got intimate and did the deed. And literally the whole point of this exchange is that, like, Eros wanted to test if, like, Medea was pure or not. And obviously we know for a fact that Medea was not pure to begin with. There's been hints throughout the story, so to speak, early on, like I think chapter 104 in the 50s as well. There's been some hints there, especially with, Helios and all that. But basically, with this chapter, Eros really heavily comes on to her, and then we get, like, a chapter or two later, and we have this whole scene to where it's like, it looks like she's literally been in a battle. Like, it looks like she was literally a battle in the bed, and has, like, hickeys and bites all over her, and I'm just like, yo, I cannot believe that we actually just got something like this within, this webtoon. I was completely taken aback when I was reading these chapters, because obviously this is very significant, because what Medea just saw from Eros is his mask. The facade was completely removed. He finally got to see, or she finally got to see, who he really was, and how he is in general, and for the very first time, she got to just see how cold, evil, and just malicious he can be as a person, but also at the same time, deep down within him, there is some form of love for Medea, even if she can't fully, or even if he can't fully understand it. She feels it. She can tell that there is some twisted love he has for her, which is just a very fascinating turn of events. But what really makes these chapters crazy, and I'm kind of going to show this here, is that after all this happens, basically after, she's left with bite marks and hickeys all over her body, you see where, Medea's actual mother comes into the picture, and she starts to basically talk to her, and is like, oh, these techniques, I taught you when you were a kid and all that, so you used it. And FYI, what's being implied in this chapter is that Medea's own mother was kind of grooming her kid to be able to use her body in such a way to get what she wants. And it just brings up a very dark subject matter that honestly I was a little bit shocked was kind of presented within this chapter, chapter 156 of Your Throne. And to actually just straight up see the mother being this despicable. I mean, we already knew she was a bad parent. We knew the father was a bad parent. I mean, look what happened to him. The man's dead now. But it's just like, seeing the mother like this and how she's acting, it's like, man, it really, she should just go back into that coma that she's been in for a long time now. She really should, because it's like, getting this confirmation on just what she kind of taught Medea, it shows that she has never been pure. Even before the supposed hints with Helios and stuff, and, what we got with chapter 154 and all that, yeah, her mother clearly made sure she wasn't, at a very early age, just to get her ready, and it really just kind of expresses why Medea for a very long time has been, very stone cold, very, like basically like an ice queen. And it makes perfect sense. If you're done like that, not just from your father, but from like your mother teaching you these type of things, it's going to make you very scarred and dark and just distant as a person, which obviously, if it wasn't thanks to just the overall circumstances of Psyche being in Medea's life, Medea would have been the perfect, like, spouse, the perfect, like, wife, so to speak, for, Eros, because she is technically all intents and purposes, she is as cruel and as evil and twisted as he is, but thanks to Psyche and her changing bodies and, her getting to learn a little bit more about how it is to live and be in a comfier and happy environment, is why she isn't, Eros's actual wife, why she isn't that dark and evil, etc. So, I don't know, man, just seeing this type of stuff, it really is a huge whiplash, kind of showcasing what could have been if there wasn't certain, altering events that, for instance, just changed Medea forever, thanks to Psyche and her changing bodies early in the story, and it just shows how much of an effect the two characters had on each other, because in chapter, 171, we get to see that thanks to, Medea's cold demeanor and how she is, Psyche as well has gotten a little bit more of that cold demeanor to where she is able to be a little bit more just stonewall. She can stonewall people and not have to, completely listen to their emotions or what they're trying to say. She can just get things done. So they both learned and taken aspects from each other personality-wise and have bettered themselves and grown as individuals. And it's nice to see. I'm glad to see, even despite over 150 plus to 170 chapter plus into the story, the events that happened very early on in the story in the first 20 or so chapters is still very, very relevant, and it just shows the effect that these characters have had on each other, and I just love it when writers do stuff like that. But getting into the main topic though, so yeah, I wanted to talk about Your Throne, because these chapters have just been wild. This stuff here with chapter 158 and seeing Medea confronting the Empress, the Emperor's wife, and basically, to kind of explain what's going on here, is that the Empress put Medea up to the task of, investigating their own son, Eros, because Eros is obviously plotting to take the throne, plotting to get rid of his father, and the father's obviously been deathly ill for a while. He's been getting sicker and sicker, and eventually to the point to where if he does die, obviously, Eros can become the new ruler of the entire kingdom. And we know that it will eventually lead to war. He'll try to be basically a giant conqueror, take over everything that he possibly can, etc. But the main point is that the Empress put Medea up to the task of hey, can you see what our son is really trying to do? Can you give proof exactly what he's trying to do and all this? And everything about it is a desperate mother trying to look at her son as someone that is a kind-hearted boy and wanting to prove his innocence, but at the same time, she knows deep down that he is a very malicious individual that will just kill people on a whim. And it's really sad to see kind of the back and forth with the Empress and all that, and how she really, despite knowing the truth, despite knowing how heinous Eros is, she doesn't want to accept it. And that led to this situation here where you see Medea, her face is scratched and messed up, because it's the mother just lashed out of anger because she just doesn't want to accept the words that Medea was actually saying to her. So yeah, there's a lot that's been going on, and as the story continues to unravel and more things continue to happen, it makes me really wonder exactly what fully happened to the father. For instance, we know the father, has been getting, poisoned, or something's been happening to him for a while. We know Eros is responsible, but we don't know exactly the circumstances of what truly caused it. And one thing we do know, though, is that Eros is involved. And as more and more of the story continues to, give a little bit more details, I'm led to believe it actually might be the Empress that's causing this. Despite her obvious love for her son and love for the Emperor and all that, and trying to prove his innocence and also trying to accept the fact that he's also evil too, I feel like deep down she might be trying to win her son's favor to some degree, or she's worried maybe that, her husband might strike out at her son or something like that. And so I feel like deep down maybe it is actually the Empress that is trying to slowly poison the Emperor, which is leading to Eros slowly being able to get into the throne. That's my assumption of what's been going on in these latest chapters. But regardless, though, we got to talk about this bombshell of a chapter for chapter 165. And that is when Medea actually gets what she wants. She actually becomes basically an empress. She is always, since the very beginning of the story, which is what kind of set in motion every event, she was engaged with Eros, as we know, and then obviously it was called off thanks to Psyche, and she always wanted to be the Empress. She wanted to basically rule the country, and as I've already talked about even in this video, if she was married to Eros and they didn't, like, for instance, if Medea didn't have the development with Psyche, they would have been a power couple of just crazy tyranny. They would have been insane dictators that would have been pretty much unstoppable with just how great of minds both of them have and how they can just basically plan so far ahead. There really would have barely been anyone that could have stopped them. And so it's thanks to Psyche, obviously, that why that didn't happen. But obviously, the objective for a very long time is for Medea to actually be the Empress. And she obtains it in a way she honestly did not expect. And we have this rare moment with her to where she is actually just straight up shocked by the Emperor's words. It's like, I'm going to adopt her and make her my daughter. And it's just like, holy crap. Like, I didn't expect it. You know for a fact she didn't expect it. It was not something that was even mentioned to her, but it happened. And it really just kind of shows a lot about the Emperor as well as a character. And I guess it's a perfect way to segue to that. The Emperor is a character we have obviously heard about throughout the story with these 100 plus chapters of Your Throne, but we've never really had him actually straight up in the story. Like, we've seen little speeches of him, etc., but we've never had, like, full chapters dedicated to him, really diving into his character. And after seeing how he was in chapter 165, 164, etc., it's just so crazy that a character that we meet pretty much at the end of his lifespan, that's deathly ill, about to die, he's such a very powerful figure, and he has such a, like, you could feel the strength radiating off of him, despite him obviously being at death's door. Someone that is literally just coughing up blood and can barely move, pretty much a walking corpse, still radiates so much power from him. And I love his character. It shows that he isn't necessarily evil, he's not a bad guy, he just tries his best to make his country the best it possibly can, and obviously he makes mistakes, and, you know, he takes responsibility for those mistakes. And, I don't know, I like his character a lot. There is a lot of depth to his character that chapter 164 dives into, and I love his, you know, overall interaction with, you know, Medea as well, because this is something that she's always wanted in her life. I mean, we have seen it constantly, and once again, we've had that reminder in the chapter 155, 156, and 158, that, you know, she's always had this dysfunctional family. I mean, her mother obviously clearly groomed Medea in ways that is obviously just despicable for a child, but on top of that, the father was very abusive to her. We saw what he was going to do to her. You know, he was going to basically execute his own daughter. There was a lot that was happening, and Medea has never really had security. She's never had a good family. She was never treated well by her mother or father, and she even, you know, actually executed her own father because of it. And we know the circumstances of why that happened, but it's just interesting that she actually finds someone that is like a father figure in her life, but this father figure in her life is pretty much at the end of his life, and he's not going to be there for much longer. Even if Psyche obviously heals him and he's able to overcome this, he's not going to be around that long. He's very old, and, you know, he probably has maybe at most a few years, 5 years or so ahead of him. So it's honestly sad, and I hate and love that for her, that she has someone in her life to be kind of like a father figure. But I also hate it that, you know, he is someone that probably could just die at any moment, and that pain of losing another parental figure will be very hard on her, because we've seen that was one of the biggest traumas she had throughout her entire early life. And so, yeah, I love what the writer is honestly doing with Your Throne. This has been absolutely incredible. Obviously, I'm not caught up, so I can't really say what's going on in the latest chapters, but man, there's been a lot of cooking going on in these chapters, especially with what happened with Psyche as well. Like, oh my goodness, like, chapter 169, where Psyche pretty much loses her entire household, or executed by Eros, is just, that's nuts. Like, straight up, the man literally delivered, like, fingers and stuff to her. It's like, oh, you have a choice. You know, you could either heal my father and all that, or you can go back and try to save your house and save the people that are obviously, you know, very, very gravely wounded. It's just ridiculous, honestly, what she's having to go through as well. So, we gotta see how she's gonna overcome that, and if she's gonna seek vengeance or not. I'm looking forward to it. I'm definitely, gonna continue reading this once I'm done with this video. But I guess I'll leave it at that. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, do subscribe. It does help me out a lot. Leave a like as well. I will put a link to the series in the description down below, maybe even in the comment section as well. But thank you so much for watching. May all of you be safe, stay healthy. Chibi out.